Short speech to read. They allowed no questions afterward. Biden mouthed the words they had written. He blamed Trump voters for everything, all the violence, all the rioting, presumably for all the defaced and destroyed statues, too. They did it. It must have been Trump supporters who spray-painted "Kill Whitey" on the pedestal of the Francis Scott Key Monument in San Francisco. Of course it was. Right-wingers, always trying to erase American history. Biden's 12 minutes today in Pennsylvania may have been the most thoroughly dishonest speech ever given by an American presidential candidate. Virtually every word of it was the opposite of the truth. It was literally beyond belief.
He is incapable of telling us the truth, incapable of facing the facts, and incapable of healing. He doesn't want to shed light. He wants to generate heat, and he's stoking violence in our cities.
I'm just not seeing the reporting on it that I had
that's right.
for the first few weeks.
That's right. But they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. And this is a movement, I'm telling you. They're not going to stop. And everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And everyone should take note of that on both levels, that they're not going to let up, and they should not. And we should not.
The protests as the problem. No, the problem is what forced your fellow citizens to take to the streets. Persistent and poisonous inequities and injustice. And please, show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Violence across the whole country. Do you disavow the violence from Antifa? That's happening in Portland right now? There's riots.
That's a myth that's being spread only in Washington, D.C.
About Antifa in Portland?
Yes.
Sir, there's videos everywhere online. There's fires and riots. They're throwing fireworks at federal officers. DHS is there. Look online. It gets crazy, Mr. Nadler.
Quote, "If you're able to," Harris tweeted in June, "chip in now to the Minnesota Freedom Fund to help post bail for those protesting on the ground in Minnesota." Hundreds of thousands of residents fled the city. Not right-wingers, by the way. Joe Biden voters. They left. They had to, because violence surged out of control. Over the weekend, one savage tried to rape a 25-year-old woman on a subway platform at 11 in the morning in public view. You may have seen it on video. It happened on the Upper East Side, one of the prettiest neighborhoods in the country, a beautiful, formerly safe neighborhood.
He's been leading. It's exactly the opposite of what we've been seeing from Trump, who's been trying to incite violence this entire summer.
Just wait a second. Well, I'll get to violence in a second. No, I'm thinking in real time. The president is inciting violence?
Absolutely. He has. He has encouraged his supporters to go out, to be aggressive.
Trump is inciting violence. Oh, right. He's the one screaming at you in the car on the way home and spray painting the F word on federal buildings and smashing windows and torching Wendy's. Those are all Trump voters. Governor of Oregon, Kate Brown, promptly blamed the dead man, blamed the dead man for his own murder. Patriot Prayer was in town, Brown declared, quote, "looking for a fight." Another way of saying, this man was expressing his constitutionally protected political views, and that's no longer allowed in Portland, thanks to people like Kate Brown and Ted Wheeler. You could get murdered for doing it. This man was. Here's video of the killing. Note that someone calls out the victim's location just prior to his execution. In other words, it was a coordinated hit. Watch. "We got another right here," he screams, another Trump supporter. Just in case there was any question about the nature of the execution you just saw, and we're sorry for airing that, but it happened, we felt you should know. But in case there was any question about what it was about, the main suspect in that murder literally has a BLM symbol tattooed on his neck. If you watch the Democratic National Convention, you may be familiar with BLM. BLM is the group Democrats promoted from the stage all week. They're the movement corporate America will fire you for daring to criticize. They're the reason you're not allowed to acknowledge that all lives matter. You get fired for that, too. Many have been. This is the actual armed militia of the Democratic Party, and they are held to very different standards from the ones you live under. In fact, the suspect in this murder in Portland has been arrested twice just this summer for unlawfully carrying a loaded gun. He never went to jail. In one case, the one in Portland, the same people who tell you how much they abhor gun violence let this man go. Then he apparently murdered someone. Joe Biden did not mention this today. BLM was happy about the killing. BLM does not believe that all lives matter. They don't say they do, and they don't. They believe people who oppose them should be killed. Again, we're not making this up. Watch them celebrate the man's murder in Portland.
I just got word. The person who died was a Patriot Care Trust person. Yeah. He was a Nazi. Our community held its own and took out the trash.
Let's be honest, and Don, you do make this point, and it's important over and over. There's very little rioting. Like that's actually, there's very little violence. It's but it's magnified by Donald Trump, and it's magnified by Republicans, and it's to convince people that people are coming for them, and that's just simply not what's happening.
But guess what? The rioting has to stop. Chris, as you know and I know, it's showing up in the polling. Mm-hmm. It's showing up in focus groups. It is the only thing right now that is sticking.
Police say that they're investigating a homicide after a person was killed last night during violent clashes there. It comes, of course, just days after 2 people were killed in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Do you have any reason to believe that Russia is trying to fuel some of the civil unrest in these cities via social media or other methods?
Well, first of all, Dan, I condemn any of the violence that's going on, and I find it astounding that my colleague in the Senate can't simply condemn this. The peaceful protests, I think, are calling out in a very important way the murder of so many black men and women at the hands of police, and those protests are in the best tradition of the United States. But we need to make sure that they're peaceful, as they largely have been, and that there aren't these incidents of violence. In terms of what we can expect from the Russians or what the Russians are doing, the Russians 4 years ago, Dana, exploited Black Lives Matter. They set up their own false flags online to try to divide people along racial lines.
Are they doing it now?
And we have to, they are, once again, doing their best in social media, in their overt media, and other means to grow these divisions.